Hello, how are you? And welcome to Josiah is Right. In the 1980s, PSAs were absolutely everywhere. But what was the ultimate culmination of all those PSAs?
It's Cartoon All-Stars to the rescue today.
While it aired in April of 1990, it was the absolute fulfillment of the 1980s PSA dream. The show was financed by McDonald's. Of course it was. In my 1980s PSA history video, I actually made a joke. To be fair, the deregulated nature of cartoons and their toy associations in the 80s kind of ran amok. It became an unwieldy beast of endless toy lines, fast food, video games, and sugary cereal. How was any of that bad? Why was that clip in black and white?
That was weird.
Regardless, please be sure to check out my history of 1980s PSAs. Anyway, this just proves McDonald's must have felt as guilty for selling me burgers, fries, Happy Meal toys as Filmation was for He-Man's violence.
To see violence. To see violence.
And before we begin, we get our French fry funding from McDonald's. You were instantly bombarded by a McDonald's commercial. The show was promoted as the ultimate cartoon team-up, and it was.
Today, calling all families to watch one very special show.
I remember looking forward to this. I remember waiting to watch, but I don't remember the fact that it was actually an anti-drug PSA. I was 8 years old. In fact, I had just turned 8. Prior to my 8th birthday, I told my parents and my older brothers that I was going to start helping around the house more with things like getting firewood. And no, I did not live in 1890. It was 1990 and time for me to grow up. And this special wanted to help. This special was a big deal at the time. Now with streaming, we don't really have appointment television in this way outside of sports. It was such a big deal, it was simulcast, commercial-free, on all major networks and the USA Network, which at the time was kind of the big deal cartoon cable network. I didn't have cable at the time, but I would get super excited when I was visiting my cousins and watch the USA Saturday morning lineup. Thanks, Aunt Sue! The USA lineup, which included that weird and wonderful Highlander cartoon. We did get cable later, but we actually had to dig the 1/4 mile long trench to lay the cable ourselves. It was the early 1990s, but between the firewood, feeding the chickens, and digging trenches, it did feel a bit like the 1890s. So why was this 1990 special such a big deal? Because it included the Smurfs, Alf, Garfield, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Winnie the Pooh, the Muppet Babies, Slimer, Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, Michelangelo of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Huey, Dewey, and Louie from DuckTales. Not bad. Do not get me wrong there. But where is He-Man and She-Ra? Where is Lion-O? Where are all 9 million G.I. Joes? The Gummy Bears? Inspector Gadget? The Transformers would have been really helpful. Even Popples. Maybe Teddy Ruxpin? Mr. T? He was a cartoon in the 80s. At least give us a few more Ninja Turtles. One interesting fact I found while researching this video, apparently there was a long-standing rumor that Jim Davis was angry that Garfield was used because he was used without permission. Turns out this isn't the case. The rumor was debunked by my own former USC graduate school comedy writing teacher, Mark Evanier, on Facebook of all places, and I'm sure in real life. 2 takeaways from this. 1, Facebook is clearly not all the way evil, just mostly evil. And 2, I did not do well in comedy writing class. You can tell by watching these videos. On the Disney distributed VHS versions, before the actual special and after the McDonald's commercial, we are greeted by George and Barbara Bush and their dog, who I assume overcame his drug addiction to join them for this intro. I'm not sure. The dog doesn't actually say anything. Other than George and Barb, it stars Lindsay Parker as Corey, credited as Little Girl in things like Shocker, which terrified me as a kid, and I only ever saw the ads in comic books. And the 80s Beauty and the Beast TV show, which is maybe my mom's favorite show of all time. I was also, and am, a big fan of that show. Corey's older brother Michael is our dope fiend, and he's played by Jason Marsden, who's done so much voice work. He's actually the person who does Josiah's voice when Josiah is off camera. He's also been on screen quite a bit in everything from Murphy Brown to Boy Meets World. But for me, he's most famous and most significant as the voice of Max, Goofy's son on Goof Troop. Most of the actual cartoon all-stars were voiced by the people who were famous for voicing them. Except for Bugs Bunny. Bugs is voiced here for the first time by someone other than Mel Blanc. Now that we got the McDonald's ad and presidential greeting out of the way, the actual special begins, and it begins on a house. It could be any house. It could be your house. A piggy bank is stolen. And it's a good thing the piggy bank isn't of a famous character. If it were, there are some pretty horrific implications there. But if it were, what famous pig could it be? That one from Charlotte's Web? Is that Wilbur or something? Better yet, maybe Napoleon or Snowball from Animal Farm. Again, if it were based on a famous character, things can go from drugs to murder really quickly, as objects in this world seem to be sentient beings. Now, this is an anti-drug special, so the bank is actually stolen for drug money, and the breaking of that bank seems to set some black magic in the motion. At this point, the cartoon characters begin to come to life. Now, as you'll see, it's not always the case, but this special is basically an anti-drug Toy Story. Walking from the pages of what I assume is a little golden book, the first to awaken from their fictional slumber is the Smurfs. Of all the major cartoon characters in the 1980s, you start with the Smurfs? Don't get me wrong, the Smurfs were a big deal in the 1980s. I was all about my Smurfs. The cartoon ran from 1981 to 1989 and had over 250 episodes. That's more than my graduating class in high school. I went to a fairly small school. Anyway, by the time the special had actually aired, Smurfs had already been cancelled and would soon thereafter be off the air. My point here is, you have Looney Tunes in this thing and you start with the Smurfs? As the story unfolds, we start to meet our cartoon all-stars. They are all magically activated by that drug-related theft. The first group of which comes to life, as I said, Toy Story style. Some, like Kermit, is a clock. Winnie the Pooh is a stuffed bear, obviously. They are things in the room that come to life. It's pretty straightforward, except it isn't. I already mentioned the Smurfs coming from a book, which is kind of similar to the next thing I'm going to mention, but the Chipmunks come from a record sleeve, which implies they either just live in the record sleeve, or maybe they're the picture on the back, but I think they came from within the actual music. The proportions and scale here seems pretty arbitrary, and changes to the convenience of whatever characters are hanging out together. Just when the internal roles seem to be kind of established. Slimer comes through the wall. Slimer, it seems, is just a ghost haunting their house. A version of Who You Gonna Call plays as he appears. Did Huey Lewis sue someone over this? Speaking of rock music, we learn that Michael is addicted to marijuana, which isn't addictive. Now, I'm not endorsing it, but here it's painted in a much more horrific light than the reality. At least this anti-drug special uses a real drug and not caffeine pills like Spider-Man or Saved by the Bell.
I'm so excited! I'm so scared!
The marijuana gateway drug genie Puff of Smoke shows up and consistently tries to get Michael to do harder drugs. And the Puff of Smoke is actually voiced by George C. Scott, the guy who refused to accept the Oscar for Patton, which is one of the greatest film performances you will ever see.
Can't wait. Oh my God. The winner is George C. Scott.
Hell of a shame.
Wait, was that the Oscar he got for a man getting hit by football?
And the Oscar goes to George C. Scott in Man Getting Hit by Football.
My groin! Hell of a shame.
The drug genie gets chased off by the cops, who turns out to be Bugs Bunny. I could have sworn I saw a Looney Tunes poster in Michael's room, but Bugs just shows up, presumably in a cop car. At this point, I really don't think drugs are the issue, and I'm fairly confident that Michael's actually having a psychotic episode. The mental state of Michael aside, the scene shows us the real problem: the mom and the dad. And when I say mom and dad, I mean dad. Although mom is clearly an enabler. This is the first time that we see them, and they obviously have no idea where their kids are or what their kids are doing. Dad opens the fridge and says,
Well, that's funny. There's a couple of beers missing.
Mom then replies,
Oh, honey, you probably drank 'em watching football last night.
So, does Dad regularly get blackout drunk? No wonder the son's on drugs. Clearly his family has a history of addiction. I think I just found the special within the special. Pooh then breaks the rules of this world. But then again, what the rules are, I'm not sure. Pooh speaks to Corey, the little sister, and tells her to be a narc. She also seems to be having a psychotic episode. Returning to Michael, we then go back in time to 1988. Why was that clip in black and white?
Listen, kid, this is the past, and the past is in black and white. Get it?
Good one, Bugs. Anyway, in the past, Michael's weed-smoking friends bully him into smoking with them. They're the least mellow marijuana users in human history. In the present, Michael's friend, Evil Blossom, steals his money in an attempt to score some crack. Things have ramped up quite a bit. Michael falls into the sewer where another Michael, Michelangelo, of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles greets him. Again, the rules here really hard to follow. Some clearly toys that come to life or music that comes to life. Others just exist in this world. We, along with the Muppet Babies, enter Michael's drug-ravaged brain. The roller coaster they go on actually reminds me of the Ghost Galaxy overlay for Space Mountain at Disneyland, so it looks super fun. Again, this kid is having a psychotic episode. He hasn't even done the crack yet. The real all-star cartoon team-up is a musical version of Just Say No, which for anyone younger than me, the Just Say No campaign was a big deal in the 80s. Wonderful Ways to Say No was written by Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, the Oscar-winning team behind the greatest songs of the Disney Renaissance. The song is by no means bad, but by their standards, it's definitely direct-to-video quality. Also, they wrote part of it for Alf.
But that could be tactless.
Michael tosses his little sister against the wall. I think they should have an all-star cartoon team-up about domestic violence and alcoholism. But here it's the drugs that made him do it, not the suppressed anger towards his father. We're back in the drug-induced fever dream, where he hangs out with cartoon characters in a nightmarish Disneyland. Which again, that sounds pretty awesome. He ends up in the digestive tract ride, which I assume is his own. Fortunately, we don't actually see him get pooped out, but if we did, maybe it would have kept kids off drugs. It also appears that drugs make you a zombie. So I guess all kids will want to do drugs now? I don't know. Again, the rules of this world, kind of confusing. Also, in 1990, I may have been the only 8-year-old to like zombies. Well, I'm sure I wasn't the only one. Back then, it was kind of considered weird and not one of the biggest TV shows in television history. Finally, while I've been making fun of this episode in what I hope is a good-natured way, I really do like the reason that he decides to change in the end. Corey, the sister, has been broken down by her brother's abusive nature. A brother she clearly loves and adores. She just wants to find a way to connect with him and sees it through drugs. When Michael sees this, he decides to make a lasting change and presumably go to rehab with George Bush's dog. As the credits roll, you'll notice the names of 6 PhD consultants, and a credit for Video Store, which I'm sure is some kind of post-production house or something like that, but it's hilarious when you see it in the credits. Because maybe they just wanted to thank some local video store. Maybe it was Christoph's Video Magic in Russell, Pennsylvania, where you probably could have got this on VHS at the time.
I thought I was going to miss something important.
We learned something.
All in all, it is worth a watch, but even as a kid, I remember being disappointed. So temper your expectations. But I guess, I don't do drugs, so it worked?